All right, now, you guys can see this. There's some nice color on there. I browned them bad boys in the lard and olive oil mixture there. After we jacquarded it, we got salt and pepper running on that mug. I got tons of fat in there. This is kind of the modern part. I don't know that they did this back in the day. Chopped up carrots. Okay. Chopped up onion. And I'm also going to Snoop Dogg a little radish in there. Chopped up celery. I hope that you guys know what celery, onion, and carrot means. Okay? If you know like 3 things about cooking, one of them should be celery, carrot, onion. And that's called the mirepoix. That's a base for damn near anything that you're going to roast, any meat. You can brown it. I mean, and you can, like I said, you can substitute anything out you want. Flour it, get a cheap cut, jacquard it, flour it. Step 1. Get bone in. Take that same fat that you cooked it in and put your mirepoix in there. And you can adjust it one way or the other, but that's kind of, add the radish. You can add tomato. You can substitute bell pepper, but they have different names for different things like that. But that's roughly the same deal. We're going to brown all that, and then we're going to put the meat back in there and roast it on top. And they call this the aromatics, right? So all that flavor, particularly when you have a broth down in the bottom of that pan, wine, whatever, that's all going to permeate back out. But, the first step is browning it in some fat. That gets that caramelization on the outside of the veggies. Then you put the liquid in there. Generally, we bring that up halfway for a braise. Thereabouts, let's say. That flavor of those aromatic vegetables is going to permeate all the liquid in there, and it's going to hopefully permeate that liquid, or the aromatics are going to permeate back up into that meat, particularly if you pounded it with that jacquard. So we can turn the heat back up again here. I think anytime you see somebody cooking with a wooden spoon, there's 2 things you need to know. They probably want to whip your ass if you piss them off, and number 2, they're probably a pretty good cook, right? Right, Grandma? So I prefer wooden spoons. All right, so we got these things here browning up pretty good. Right? And this is like what fills your house with love. When your wife comes home, like mine's about to, and she walks in and she's gonna go, "Damn, Daddy's on it tonight. He's got the house smell like roasted meat, vegetables, and aromatics, and I know my boy's about to bring home some goodies." So, and she knows I might start drinking at noon because I'm unemployed at the moment. So, why not? On to alcohol consumption, because it is 12:35 right now. I'm going to drink this wine. Y'all ever seen that? 1968 Italian Cabernet Sauvignon. That is what I'm going to drink this afternoon for my lunch. Just kidding. It is actually pretty good though, and I have drank about a case of this. It's pretty phenomenal. This is my last bottle though. We're saving that puppy. It's dead though, probably. Previous ones weren't though. No, seriously though, here I'm going to drink this one. This is 2008 Barolo, which I think I always have an affinity for Barolo outside of the fact that I love it. This baby is 12 years old. You can see my dust. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to drink this one either. But that's from Italy. And I see this, and I think back to when I worked at Jungle Gems for a very short stint before I got fired from there in the beer and wine department. And we used to have this dude that came in. I don't think he spoke a damn bit of English. And he would just walk over to me and go, "Barolo, Barolo." And I'm like, "What are you, what?" And then I finally figured out this is what he wanted. And then, turns out he knows his shit. They're pretty good. Seriously though, the one that we're gonna actually cook with, and I'm gonna get my drink on this afternoon with Vecchia Modena Clito Chiarli, the sparkling Lambrusco. This is the Sorborora Secco. And he says it a lot better than I do. If you've been to Wildflower, I'm sure that you've had this wine, because this is in my top 10 wines, I think. I think it's like 16, 20 bucks, somewhere around there. It's not an expensive bottle. It's like the best brunch wine you'll ever have. This wine is the shit, man. Like, you can drink this all day, you can drink it at night. And I know, like, back in the day, everybody thought Lambrusco was some hoopty-ass Carlo Rossi type of shit. But that's not the case, man. There's some really awesome dry Lambruscos out there. And this one isn't, like, crazy dry, but it's definitely not on the sweet side either. So let's pop that puppy. It's a beautiful day outside today too, man. A little tricky on this mug right here though. Got this little capper do. Shizzles. Now, allegedly, you know, anytime you see, in this case, it's got a cork and a little metal, theoretically that's a corking cage. Anytime you see that, what that means is they put some sugar or something down in this mug and a little bit of yeast, even on beers and whatever else. That means this thing is living. It has living yeast that is going to continue to ferment, which is going to continue to produce carbon dioxide, aka bubbles. So allegedly, a lot of people have actually like knocked themselves out and weird shit off the pressure inside of these bottles and that cork popping out and busting you in the grill. So put a towel on it. Once you pull that cage off, and then I just spin the bottle and I hold the cork still. Pop, right? And it doesn't spill. I'm gonna throw the pork back up in the vegetables here. The only downside of this fancy ass copper pan, the handle gets hot as hell. But in the restaurant business, we don't touch handles unless we got a towel in the hand, because you burn your ass once or twice, probably ain't gonna do it again. And I can smell that, like it smells like confit from you know, that fragrant cinnamon that I was talking about, and like the Quatre P, I don't know if I mentioned it, but it has like cinnamon, nutmeg, white pepper, like it's super fragrant. It'll blow your mind on some meat. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Now, you got to prioritize things in your life, kids. What I mean by that is, pork don't get the wine first. The chef gets the wine first. And if you happen to have a beautiful wife like mine, may or may not be as culinary adapted as you are, you give her a job. Like, open the wine, make sure I don't run out, honey. Look at that, man. This is just the coolest. It's so good. And I'm drinking that straight out of the cellar. It's good with a little chill on it, but my cellar's not that hot anyway, so now here's where we get the cool part. When you take those meats like that and you got them coated in flour, you're going to create that textured variation on the outside versus the inside. And remember how I said in the last video about how when you have 500-degree heat or really high heat, that heat comes down and just boom, 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 starts banging the outside of that meat, like the skin and the outside, and it doesn't really penetrate, right? You would burn it before the inside is going to get hot. The lower temperature is the opposite, right? It's going to permeate all the way through that meat relatively similarly. And I'm not saying it's 100%, but y'all follow me on that, right? So slow and low, 250 degrees, I consider low, right? So slow and low, but on this case, we're going to do both. I got a hot ass pan with a bunch of fat in it, and I'm searing it off, which is going to cause right? That connective tissue is going to bond up real quick, and it's going to be super tight, right? So if I just tried to cook it that way, it's not going to cook all the way through. By the time I did, it would be burnt, and it's going to be tough as hell, like not even edible tough, right? But in this case, we're doing that on purpose, where we're browning it, and we're hitting it with that, it's tightening up real tight. But then I'm going to reverse that and throw it back in the oven and drop it down slow and low and let it go for a long ass time, where that is going to start to break apart and fall apart, right? And that other half is that the flour that we put on there, that over time, as that reduction occurs and they start intermingling in that pan, that's going to also be able to be used as a thickener for what's left in the pan. So there are many complicated culinary terms for it, but damn near all that is gravy where I'm from, right? Like this is like, that's going to be pork and vegetable gravy. You call it what you want to call it, but anytime you do that with that roast, man, and you put that sauce back in there and pull the meat out, you can strain it all out, whatever you want, thicken it, bring it to a boil, and then dump it back over. That's basically gravy, but you can do that anytime, and it's always the shit. And if not, I don't want to be friends with you. Now, I'm going to add a few things here. This is like mushrooms and herbs and some garbanzo beans that I chopped up, just to give it a little something, you know, give it like a little bit of earthiness, some interesting aspects. I've got this right here, some beef broth, and it doesn't matter to me if you use beef broth or chicken broth or whatever, but just keep in mind that like the beef broth is going to be heavier. So if your goal is like beef bourguignon or something heavy, you know, and you're going to put mushrooms and like particularly beef, whatever, beef is going to be heavier. Chicken is going to make it feel lighter, right? And particularly that gravy that's left at the end, when you use that sauce to pour it back over, do you want something light? And keep in mind too, this is going to be essentially a white wine or a rosé, so I'm going to intentionally make the sauce and the meat a little bit lighter, and that's going to match up with the cinnamon and the bay. Do you follow? Those fragrant herbs, those fragrant spices, the fragrant vegetables, I want those to shine through on the dish. So yeah, I did put some beef in there, but it's not a super rich stock, so that's okay. But you know, this would be fine with chicken, veal, whatever kind of stock you want to add. And I'm going to put some of this wine in there. And like I said, it's technically halfway up the meat is a good rule of thumb. And just like, well, hell, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let me have some more Lambrusco. Love you. Now I got my oven on 250. This baby's ready to rock. I might bring that to a boil before I throw it in. It's not that clutch. And then we're just gonna slow and low roast that baby off. Check it. I'll probably start checking it in like 3 hours, 4 hours. It's now 12:45 and I'm planning on eating this at 6. So I'm gonna go outside and do a bunch of yard work and run around on a tractor and da-da-da-da. And then I don't even have to worry about it, right? And I've got that little probe that I can put inside my oven. I'm going to put that probe in there, and I'm just going to set it. And you know, this is probably, I mean, there's no health concern of eating this at 130 degrees. It's just not going to be done. It's not going to be, it's going to be chewy. And there's no health concern for that for me. There's 140. I got no problem with that, right? And the USDA suggested temperature for cooking pork now is 140. It used to be 160. Most people probably cooked it to more like 795 degrees because they just want, you know, and that's why people say, well, the pork is really dry, blah, blah, because y'all didn't know how to cook it. But trust your boy here. We can cut it at about 150, bring it up to 160. But this guy, we're going to bring it up real slow to that 160. It's going to take a really long time to get there. And once it hits that certain temperature, which is about 160, 170, when it hits that right there, generally you don't want to go that high on anything. But in this case, it's got to ride at that temperature for X amount of time before it starts to break apart, like a pulled pork. And so we kind of want this, like, it's going to have the same type of texture as like really good ribs. That they're going to hold themselves together We're going to be able to pick that up, hopefully, and then I'll also be able to just slide that bone right out. But it still should be intact. This isn't pulled pork, right? So we'll check back in with you guys in a minute. This bad boy's going in the oven. I got her up boiling. Cut that off. I love y'all.